This is Jed Disler, and welcome to the Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. There are so many excellent recorded versions of the four Rachmaninoff concertos and the Paganini Rhapsody that to name just one favorite for each work is not an easy task because we are frankly spoiled for choice. However, I thought that I could talk about recordings that might not immediately come to mind, yet are among the best versions of these works that I know on disc. At least I think so. And having re listened to these recordings over the past few months, I mean, when did I even have the time to listen to them? I thought I could share these favorite choices with you. And I'm calling this episode Rachmaninoff concerto recordings under the radar. Now, these aren't necessarily the quote unquote best ones or necessarily favorite ones, although they are in my group of favorite Rachmaninoff concertos. And there's not a weak one in the batch, I can tell you that. So, starting with concerto number one, I've always been fascinated with and ultimately very convinced by this recording from the late 1970s featuring the pianist Tomas Vasari. And it has the London Symphony Orchestra under the direction of Yuri Aronovich. I really like this recording a lot. First of all, the orchestra playing is very full bodied, even lush at times. There's a lot of tempo fluctuation, but it sounds very natural and organic. While Tomas Vasari's style has the cutting edge brilliance and the sleekness that you would associate with somebody like maybe Gary Graffman or Eugene Eastman, there's a lot of flexibility as well. And it's different from the more regimented kind of interpretation that you get from, say, Byron Janis and Fritz Reiner. But I am really drawn to this Thomas Vasari recording with the London Symphony of Concerto Number One. Now, for Concerto Number Two, discipline and brilliance and stinging transparency on both pianistic and orchestral levels consistently abound in this mid 1950s recording with the pianist Julius Katchen and George Solti conducting the London Symphony Orchestra. They're in this recording too. They were in the concerto number one that I just talked about. And the outer movements, especially in this recording, have tremendous drive and a sense of inner rhythm. It's a very, very satisfying interpretation. Now, at the opposite end of the virtuoso spectrum, there's this very interesting Rachmaninoff third concerto recording that is eccentric in certain ways, but somehow it's always held my attention. And it features the Czech pianist Mirka Pokorná and the Brno State Philharmonic Orchestra under the direction of Jiří Pinkas. This was first released on Superphone, and you can find it as a digital download in different places. I don't know if it was on CD on Superphone. I'm not sure. I have several incarnations of this performance. Anyway, in the first movement, the opening theme goes at a very deliberate pace. But when the orchestra takes up the theme from the piano, then everything just speeds up. And there's a lot of volatile stop-start kind of rubato throughout the performance and very angular phrasing that my late friend and colleague Harris Goldsmith likened to the idea of one playing the Rachmaninoff Third Concerto as if it had been composed by Janacek, which is kind of an interesting observation, and it's not quite so far from the truth. Now, there's not much in the way of powerful momentum and romantic sweep in this recording, and you can hardly say that the interpretation is idiomatic. But there is something to it that fascinates me, and it's unlike any other Rachmaninoff third that I've heard before. And I listen to it every once in a while and definitely check it out. It's certainly different. Now, for the fourth concerto, I am a big fan of the recording with Edel Biret on Noxus with Antoni Witt and the Polish National Radio Symphony Orchestra. This is a terrific recording on many levels. Now, just take the orchestra playing alone and listen to how, at the very beginning of the opening movement, how the conductor takes special care to differentiate the brass and the woodwind repeated notes while not allowing the full bodied strings to wear their hearts on their sleeves when they take up the piano's opening theme. And Edel Barrett, by the way, she just scampers through that finale and she matches pianists like Earl Wild, I think, for playfulness and ebullience, note for note. So this is really a Rachmaninoff fourth concerto to consider. I put it alongside the one with Yasha Horenstein conducting Earl Wild, and of course the classic Michelangeli recording on EMI, now Warner Classics. For the Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini, it's hard for me to get my reference versions of Earl Wild or William Capell or even the old Leon Fleischer recording out of my head. I'd even put in Gary Grafman and Leonard Bernstein with the New York Philharmonic. But there is a fairly recent recording that I have to admit was not on my personal radar until not too long ago. And it features the pianist Yevgeny Sudbin with the Singapore Symphony Orchestra under the direction of Lan Shui. And the tempos are brisk, but not overly driven. And there's wonderfully detailed interplay between the soloist and orchestra in true concertante-like fashion, which you really do need in this work. And there's characterful contrast from variation to variation, but still everything hangs together with unity of purpose. And the engineering is simply out of this world. So this is definitely a Paganini Rhapsody to have with Yevgeny Sudbin, Lan Shui, and the Singapore Symphony on the Beast label. So there we have it. The Rachmaninoff four concertos and the Paganini Rhapsody in recordings that might be under the radar, at least where I'm concerned or where you're concerned, but definitely check them out if you love these pieces. This is Jed Disler, and you've been listening to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. I look forward to being with you for our next episode. Take good care.